The Jedi Council chamber had never felt colder to Qui-Gon Jinn as he stood before the assembled masters, young Anakin Skywalker at his side. The boy's testing had revealed power beyond measure, midi-chlorian counts that defied explanation, yet the verdict came swift and absolute from the ancient Grandmaster. Trained as a Jedi he will not be. Too old he is. Too much anger. Too much fear. The Force itself seemed to shudder at these words, as if reality was splitting into new possibilities. Qui-Gon's jaw tightened, his usual composure cracking. He had found the Chosen One, the one prophesied to bring balance, and they would cast him aside? But it was Mace Windu who voiced the compromise that would reshape the galaxy's fate. Mother Talzin of Dathomir had long sought closer ties with the Republic. Her Nightsisters commanded the Force through different means, emotions channeled rather than suppressed, power embraced rather than feared. Perhaps their teachings could provide the balance this boy needed, a middle path between light and dark. Better to have allies watch him than enemies steal him. The Nightsisters will take the boy. The decision rippled outward through the Force like a stone dropped in still water. Within days, Anakin Skywalker, the boy who would have been Obi-Wan's Padawan, who would have grown up in the Temple's halls learning patience and restraint, found himself aboard a ship bound for a world of red skies and darker mysteries. Obi-Wan watched from the landing platform as the vessel disappeared into hyperspace, Qui-Gon's dying wish weighing on his conscience like a stone he would carry for decades. The other younglings watched too, sensing something momentous had shifted, though none could say exactly what. The Chosen One was leaving, and with him went the galaxy's intended future. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. We thank you all for your continued support. Dathomir greeted young Anakin like a predator evaluating prey. The planet itself seemed alive with malevolent purpose, twisted trees that whispered secrets in languages that predated the Republic, beasts that moved through shadows cast by no visible light source, and always the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes that judged and measured. The very air tasted different here, thick with power that the Jedi would call dark, but the Nightsisters simply called truth. So, the Jedi send me their rejected Chosen One. They fear what you might become under their teachings. How delicious that they deliver you to me instead. Her fingers, adorned with bone rings carved from creatures that should not exist, traced the air around Anakin's face without touching him, reading his potential in ways the Jedi never could. The training that followed made the Jedi trials look like meditation exercises. Where the Jedi taught restraint, the Nightsisters demanded passion. Where the Temple preached peace, Dathomir rewarded power. Anakin learned to weave illusions that could fool 100 eyes, making armies see enemies where there were none. He learned to bind spirits to his will, calling on the dead to serve the living. Most importantly, he learned to channel his emotions, all that anger and fear the Jedi had sensed, into weapons of terrifying potency. You fight like you're angry at the universe. Good. The universe deserves it. She was only slightly older, another orphan claimed by the Nightsisters, and she understood what it meant to be an outsider. Together, they grew strong in ways the Jedi would never approve of, learning that mercy was weakness and power was the only truth that mattered. The boy from Tatooine was dying, and something else was being born in the crimson shadows of Dathomir's eternal twilight. Time moved differently on Dathomir, but even there, the galaxy's descent into war could be felt. When the Clone Wars erupted across the Thousand Systems, suddenly everyone needed allies. Master Windu himself came to Dathomir, though his discomfort radiated through the Force like a beacon. The Republic required assistance, and their abandoned Chosen One had grown into something that could turn the tides of battle. Anakin emerged from the shadows at Talzin's gesture, 22 years old, dressed in black robes that seemed to drink light, a lightsaber at his hip that hummed with unnatural energy. The boy was gone. In his place stood a warrior who had learned to weaponize the very darkness the Jedi feared. What do you think, my champion? Shall we help those who abandoned you? His first mission with the Jedi was supposed to be simple reconnaissance on Christophsis. Obi-Wan Kenobi, now a member of the Council himself, watched his assigned partner with barely concealed unease. This was the boy Qui-Gon had wanted him to train, transformed into something that made the Force itself recoil. They moved through Separatist lines like ghosts, Anakin's Nightsister magic rendering them invisible to both droids and organic eyes. But everything changed when they were assigned to protect Senator Padme Amidala. Anakin saw her across the Senate landing platform, and the Force sang a song of destiny that even 13 years of Nightsister training couldn't silence. Annie? Little Annie? You've changed. She was everything Dathomir wasn't. Light where it was shadow, hope where it was hunger, beauty unmarred by the magic that had carved itself into Anakin's very bones. Their romance would become a collision of worlds, dangerous and inevitable as gravity itself. The partnership between Obi-Wan and Anakin was effective but strained, like a chord played slightly off-key that set everyone's teeth on edge. They completed missions with a success rate that impressed even the Council, but the methods Anakin employed terrified the Jedi. On Ryloth, he turned separatist droids against each other using possession techniques that shouldn't exist. On Felucia, he raised the spirits of fallen clones to continue fighting after death. Each victory came at a cost measured not in credits or casualties, but in the slow erosion of the barrier between what was acceptable and what was abomination. Your power is impressive, but these methods, this isn't the way, Anakin. The words fell on ears trained to hear weakness and mercy. Anakin's relationship with Padme grew in secret, a desperate grasping for something pure in a life stained by shadow magic. She showed him gentleness he'd forgotten existed. He showed her that sometimes the galaxy needed someone willing to walk in shadows to preserve the light. But Chancellor Palpatine watched from afar, seeing in this dark warrior a tool more perfect than any Sith apprentice. Someone already steeped in darkness, but not yet claimed by a master. His influence began subtle, commenting on Anakin's successful, if unorthodox, methods, defending him when the Council expressed concerns. The Council fears what they don't understand. They always have. Meanwhile, Count Dooku reported to his hidden master that Talzin's creature was becoming too powerful, that the Nightsister-trained warrior was disrupting carefully laid plans. The decision was made. Anakin Skywalker had to die, and with him, Dathomir's growing influence on the war. The attack would come soon, and it would change everything. The Jedi Council's distrust of Anakin had evolved from concern to barely concealed fear. Every mission report that crossed their desks told of victories achieved through methods that violated everything they held sacred. Yoda meditated on the prophecy daily now, wondering if they had fundamentally misunderstood its meaning. Perhaps the Chosen One wasn't meant to bring balance through harmony, but through destruction of everything that came before. Mace Windu argued for restricting Anakin's movement, but they needed his power too desperately to cast him aside completely. Corrupted the prophecy may be, the Chosen One, a destroyer rather than savior, he might become. Padme noticed the change in Anakin during their stolen moments together. His laugh came less frequently, his touch grew colder, and sometimes she caught him staring at nothing with eyes that burned faintly green in the darkness. She tried to reach the boy she'd known on Tatooine, but that child was buried beneath years of Nightsister conditioning and the fresh wounds of the Council's rejection. When she suggested he leave it all behind, the war, the Jedi, Dathomir, he laughed bitterly and showed her the ritual scars that covered his arms. These aren't just marks, Padme, they're chains. Talzin owns me as surely as Watto ever did. The binding rituals of the Nightsisters ran deeper than flesh, tethering his very essence to Dathomir's dark power. He could no more abandon his training than he could stop breathing. But Palpatine's whispers grew stronger, promising freedom from all masters, power to protect what he loved, and most seductively, the ability to write his own destiny. The stage was set for Dathomir's destruction, and with it, the final push that would send Anakin over the edge. The attack came at dawn, though on Dathomir, dawn was merely a lighter shade of crimson. Count Dooku himself led the assault, his curved lightsaber already ignited as waves of battle droids emerged from landing craft. General Grievous followed, his collection of stolen lightsabers spinning in deadly patterns that had claimed dozens of Jedi lives. The Nightsisters' magic met Separatist technology in a clash that turned the red skies black with smoke and death. Your pet has grown too powerful, witch. My master demands his death. Anakin fought like a man possessed, because in many ways he was. Every ritual, every binding, every drop of blood he'd shed on Dathomir's altar had tied him to this place and these people. He watched Nightsisters he'd grown up with fall to blaster fire, their death screams joining the chorus of spirits that always whispered at the edge of his consciousness. He saw younglings, witch children who'd called him brother, cut down by Grievous's spinning blades without mercy or hesitation. Something inside him, something that had been building since the day the Jedi rejected him, finally snapped like a rope pulled too tight. If I cannot have you, then you will carry Dathomir's curse forever. You are a shadow made flesh, Anakin Skywalker. Her death curse hit him like a physical blow, searing into his very soul with the force of 13 years of accumulated power. Green fire erupted from his body, consuming droids and clones alike in an inferno that could be seen from orbit. When the flames died, Anakin stood alone among the ashes of his adopted family. Something fundamental within him changed forever. The binding was complete. He would carry Dathomir with him always, a living wound in the Force itself. In the aftermath of Dathomir's fall, standing among the bodies of the only family he'd known for over a decade, Anakin felt the gentle touch of another presence in his mind. Not Jedi with their cold light, not Nightsister with their hungry shadows, but something older, more patient, infinitely more dangerous. Chancellor Palpatine's influence had been growing for years, but now, with Talzin dead and the Jedi's distrust at its peak, the Sith Lord made his move. Such magnificent power, wasted by those who fear it. I could teach you to break every chain, even the ones binding your soul. The promise of freedom was more intoxicating than any dark side teaching. After a lifetime of being owned, by Watto, by the Jedi's rejection, by Talzin's bindings, the idea of true independence was irresistible. Palpatine revealed himself slowly, carefully, showing Anakin the truth behind the war, the manipulations that had shaped his entire life. The Jedi had sent him away out of fear. Talzin had bound him out of greed, but Sidious offered partnership. Power shared rather than hoarded. He spoke of Padme, of the children she carried, of how the Jedi Code would demand their separation. Tell me how to save them. Tell me how to be free. The fall wasn't sudden. It was inevitable, the final step in a journey that began the moment the Council rejected a 9-year-old boy. But this wasn't the conflicted fall of canon. This was a deliberate choice made by someone who had already walked in darkness for 13 years. When Order 66 came, Anakin didn't hesitate. He had been preparing for this moment since the day he first felt Talzin's chains around his soul. Now he would break free by destroying everything that had ever tried to control him. The final destruction of the Nightsisters played out in Anakin's mind as he marched on the Jedi Temple. Every death on Dathomir had carved itself into his memory, fuel for the inferno that was about to consume the Jedi Order. Ventress had survived, barely, her body broken, but her spirit intact enough to escape into the wilderness. She alone understood what Anakin had become. Not fallen to the dark side, but transformed into something that transcended traditional understanding of the Force. The other survivors scattered across the galaxy, carrying warnings that no one would heed until it was too late. You're not Anakin anymore. You're something else. Something worse. The massacre had done more than kill the Nightsisters. It had shattered the last restraints on Anakin's power. Talzin's death curse hadn't just bound him to darkness, it had made him a conduit for all of Dathomir's accumulated magic. Centuries of shadow rituals and spirit bindings flowing through a single vessel. The Force itself recoiled from what he had become, neither Sith nor Nightsister, but something new and terrible. When he stood before the temple gates, green fire dancing around his fingers and the screams of Dathomir's dead echoing in his mind, even the temple guards sensed that death itself had come calling. They feared the wrong prophecy. I don't bring balance, I bring ending. The clone troopers followed him without hesitation, their inhibitor chips ensuring loyalty, but even they felt unease at the shadows that writhed around their general like living things. The assault on the temple wouldn't just be a military action, it would be a ritual, a sacrifice to powers that should never have been awakened. And somewhere in the Senate building, Palpatine smiled, not fully understanding what he had unleashed, but delighting in the destruction it would bring. The Jedi Temple burned with green fire that night, a pyre that could be seen from orbit and would burn in the Force for generations. Anakin moved through the halls like death personified. Every lesson Talzin had taught him, every binding she'd placed, every drop of darkness the Jedi had feared, all of it unleashed without restraint. And this wasn't the mechanical slaughter of canon. He didn't just kill the Jedi, he bound their spirits using Nightsister magic, trapping them in their own temple, cursed to relive their failures for eternity. The younglings' fates was worse. Quick deaths would have been mercy compared to what shadow magic could do to innocent souls. What have you done? This isn't you. This is Sidious, Talzin. Their duel on Mustafar became legend, made nightmare. Where the canon fight had been brutal but straightforward, this became a battle across multiple planes of existence. Anakin split into shadow duplicates, each one as deadly as the original. He summoned the spirits of dead separatists to fight alongside him, their ghostly forms wielding weapons of pure Force energy. He turned the lava itself into living creatures of molten rock and rage. Obi-Wan fought with everything he had, but how do you defeat someone who exists partially outside reality itself? Brother. The Jedi don't have brothers, but the Sith do. In the end, it was Anakin's own rage that defeated him, drunk on power and convinced of his invincibility. When he fell into the lava, the curse that bound him to Dathomir kept him alive far longer than should have been possible, his screams echoing across multiple dimensions. What emerged from Palpatine's reconstruction chamber was something that should never have existed. Not quite Vader, but Darth Mortis, a wound in the Force that grew stronger with every soul it consumed. The galaxy had feared Darth Vader in another timeline. They would learn to prefer him to what they got instead, Darth Mortis, a being of living shadow and technological horror, spreading Dathomir's curse across the stars while serving a master who only thought he controlled him. The mechanical suit was inscribed with Sith runes and Nightsister glyphs, a fusion of dark sciences that should never have existed. Where Vader would have breathed with mechanical lungs, this creature breathed with stolen souls. Where Vader was imprisoned in his suit, this thing wore it like armor over shadow flesh that could shift and change at will. Created him we did. Our fear, our compromise, our failure. Chose darkness, he did not. Became darkness itself, he has. Padme had died not of a broken heart, but of the curse that Talzin had bound to Anakin's soul. passed to her through their connection. Her last words weren't about good still existing in him, but warnings about protecting the children from what their father had become. Luke and Leia would grow up not just hidden, but warded, protected by every light side technique the surviving Jedi could muster, because this wasn't a father who might be redeemed. This was a creature that wore their father's face while being something else entirely. The galaxy doesn't need New Hope. It needs an army of shadows to fight Shadow itself. In the depths of wild space, she trained with the survivors, preparing for a war not just against the Empire, but against the monster that had once been her closest friend. The Chosen One had brought balance, by becoming the absence that made both light and dark irrelevant. Sometimes the alternative is worse than the fall. The stars themselves seemed dimmer when Darth Mortis walked, reality wearing thin under the weight of what should never have been. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of what might have been, remember to hit that subscribe button and join us for more explorations of the infinite possibilities within that galaxy far, far away. May the Force be with you, always.